My husband passed away almost 2 months ago, and it's been the most awful time for me. He was involved in an accident. He didn't die on the spot. I thought there was hope, but as time went on and he wasn't getting better, we prepared for the inevitable. It was the hardest thing to do. Seeing him like that broke me into pieces. We had a child together, my sweet son. What were we going to do without him? His dad was in such a bad state that we agreed that when he got a little better after the accident, we would let our son come to see him. But he never did. My husband didn't want the last memories that his son had of him to be sad. Once I understood perfectly, so I went with his decision. How do I explain to a 3-year-old that he would never see his dad again? He shouldn't have to deal with that. My husband's death is still very fresh for me, and I don't know if I will ever be able to get over it. My family and in-laws have been quite supportive, except for the one person, my brother-in-law's wife. We just never clicked. She married my husband's brother a few years before I did. It felt like she didn't want me in the family. She treated me like I was a stranger who was intruding. Suppose anyone was going to treat me that way, in that case, it should be the original members of the family like my husband's sisters, not someone who also got married into the family. She had a close relationship with my husband, though. I didn't suspect anything because I thought that she had known him since she was dating my brother-in-law. So it was normal. I was so wrong. Before my husband passed on, he told me that he had done something awful and wondered how he was going to bring it up. He said he had an affair with my sister-in-law, and now she was pregnant for him. They would let his brother believe that it was his child. Still, with everything that had happened to him and seeing how the whole family catered for him, he felt too guilty to let things remain in the dark. It was at that time that everything made sense. I now understood why my sister-in-law didn't like me. She was having an affair with my husband. When he told me this, I was beyond shocked. I don't know how to react because he said something worth leaving him for, but he was also on his sick bed. I found myself wondering if it would be heartless of me to just disappear with my son and never come back. I didn't get to make that decision because he died shortly after. Even though he betrayed me, his death still hurts like hell, and I wonder how I would cope without him. My husband left me with a heavy burden. I was either going to keep his secret to protect him and his legacy, or I would tell everyone. Someday the truth will definitely come out. The saying that nothing is hidden under the sun proves to be true. I hadn't decided yet, but we had a family gathering, the first after my husband's burial. His parents had told everyone to come over to theirs. I was honestly anxious about seeing everyone, not just because I was now a widow, but also because I kept the secret. I went to my father-in-law's house, and everyone was there. They were being extra careful with me, which I thought was sweet because my husband was as important to me as he was to them. Still, they just wanted to be more sensitive towards me, all except my sister-in-law. Of course, she kept making insensitive comments, but I wasn't in her mood. So, I ignored her most of the time until she made a silly joke about how I was now alone and a widow with my only child. I replied, saying, "At least I'm married to the father of my child. Unlike you." I was loud enough for everyone around to hear me. My brother-in-law asked me to explain what I meant by that, and then I told him everything my husband said to me, including how they had planned to make it seem like the child belonged to him. All hell broke loose. It was worse for my sister-in-law because the entire family was present. My brother-in-law asked her if what I was saying was true, but she couldn't reply. She stood there like a ghost. She didn't know that my husband had told me their little secret. There was so much chaos resulting from the news, and my brother-in-law wanted her out of his sight. He couldn't stand to be with her, and the whole family agreed with him. She was asked to leave. I felt a little weird that I was the one to break the news, but I honestly also think it was the best decision. It was better for everything to come out in the open now. Keeping it a secret would have eaten away at me, and I was already grieving and did not need the extra burden. Some weeks have passed since I told everyone that my late husband had an affair with his brother's wife, and she was pregnant by him. My brother-in-law filed for divorce, and he wants full custody of their 2 kids. His wife had tried to plead with him, saying it was a mistake and she didn't know what came over her. But her excuse didn't fly. It was even worse for my brother-in-law because he couldn't express how he felt towards my husband, who was dead. My sister-in-law had taken a while to sign the papers because she was trying to convince my brother-in-law to give her a second chance. But everyone knew that it wouldn't happen. The whole family was in support of his decision to get a divorce. My sister-in-law sent me threatening messages. She cussed at me and said so many things. She was just bitter after having an affair with my husband. One would think that she would show some remorse towards me. It was like she felt entitled to our forgiveness. We were the bad people because we refused to forgive her, and we called ourselves family. She made that statement, and what got me was the irony of it all. My brother-in-law moved out of their house until they finalized the divorce. I think she was going crazy because she almost assaulted me, if not that there were a few people around. She had followed me and found the perfect spot when I was out running some errands. I immediately filed a restraining order against her. She didn't get to do anything physical, but you could tell that the way she was coming at me, that was where things were headed. I wondered how she fell so far. Her husband adored her and took care of her every need. She has been staying at home since having kids. She was actually glad and decided not to work of her own volition. I hope she was saving because after her divorce, it's going to be a hell of a ride for her. I spoke to my brother-in-law to apologize for everything. He told me that I didn't need to apologize because I was also betrayed. So I wasn't the enemy. He commended me for still staying with my husband, even when he confessed to what he had done. My brother-in-law was an emotional wreck. I thought I was emotional. But seeing him suffering the way he was so bad. 2 of the people he loved the most betrayed him. I know how much he loved his wife because I remember when I was still dating my husband. When we hung out a few times, you could see the love. She was one of the things that made him so proud because he thought he had the perfect woman. And now, that perfect woman turned out to be not so perfect after all. The divorce was finalized, and though my brother-in-law wanted full custody of his kids, he decided it wouldn't be the best decision. It was less likely that full custody would be granted by the court. My brother-in-law tries to act like he's fine when everyone is around, but deep down, I know that he's hurting. He wanted as little contact with his ex-wife as possible, usually begging his sister to do errands concerning the kids for him. If he didn't have to be there, he knew that she would. It was like he was running away from her. On one of those days, he asked me to drop the kids off with their mom because his sister wasn't available. Apart from reminding him of the restraining order, I told him he couldn't keep running away. At some point, he would have to face the reality of what happened and move on. He couldn't keep being deliberately absent from some events in his children's lives just because their mother would be there. He needed to get it together fast. She was the one who did wrong. So if anyone was to be uncomfortable, it should be her and not him. It was okay if he still loved her. You don't tell your heart to stop loving someone automatically because they hurt you. My husband died and cheated on me, and I still love him, even though it's very painful. Most people in the family walk on eggshells around my brother-in-law and me with everything that's happened. They don't know how to act. Some feeling guilty if they have to celebrate something or going quiet whenever we're around. When they do that, It makes me feel strange and reminds me of what I had lost. I wish they would stop doing that and just treat me normally. I told my mother-in-law how I felt about it, and she actually made a conscious effort to make sure I felt more comfortable. She didn't treat me any differently from anyone else, and I think the others are catching up. As for my brother-in-law and his divorce, they're getting into a routine that works so they can adequately co-parent, and I hope it works out for them. I get what your husband was trying to do, but I also feel that he was a coward who dropped the bomb on you and left you to decide what to do with the information. If he really wanted to make amends, he would have called his whole family and told them. Maybe he wanted to but didn't get the chance to before he passed on. I mean, no disrespect, and I am so sorry for your loss. Your sister-in-law deserves worse than she got. She was most likely in love with your husband. That's why she mistreated you. I wouldn't be surprised if she was the one that initiated the affair, which doesn't make your husband innocent. Though, your brother-in-law needs to get a hold of himself so he doesn't lose time with his kids. His ex is the wrong person here, so he can't let her have all the time with the kids because he doesn't want to face his ex. He may be jeopardizing his relationship with his kids without even knowing it.